Hello fellow makeup lovers, how are you guys doing today? I thought it would be fun to finally go through and swatch my entire Terra Moons collection. This has been pretty highly requested. I love their eyeshadows so much. I feel like they do amazing iridescent shades, amazing multichromes, amazing matte shades, pastels, neons. They just honestly have such an amazing collection of shadows. I think that I own almost all of them. There's probably just a few that I'm missing. I just love their quality. I do have a discount code. I don't make a commission on it or anything, but it's just Amy Loves. So it does save you a little bit of money off if you're interested in trying anything from Terra Moons. I'm going to be swatching all the shadows in this palette, and then I also have their El Barrio palette that they released for holiday this last year, I don't know. I mean, it's literally like 3 days into 2021, but you know what I'm saying. So here's what this one looks like. Super cute. So I thought that I would go through and also, whenever I get to each section, like I'll do the blues with the blues that I have in this palette just to compare them a little bit, because I believe that all of these are available as single shadows as well. Also, really quickly, I do receive PR from Terra Moons, but I also purchase a lot of their shadows myself. So the original Iridescent Chameleons I bought, they sent the extension shades. I bought the pastel chameleons, they sent the pastel mattes, they sent the Cosmic Chameleons. I bought their releases for Black Friday in 2019. They sent their fall mattes from that year. They also sent their Halloween collection this year. So this is a giant mixture of gifted and purchased, but if I wasn't sent the ones that I was sent, I would 100% buy them myself because I love them. And whenever they're like, oh, we're gonna send you this release, it's like, great, because I was gonna buy it anyways, every time. So, oh, and also El Barrio was sent to me as PR. So let's jump in, starting with this little section here. All these light iridescent shades, I know they look very similar in the pan, but from my view, and like when you move them around, you can see the shifts a little bit more. There's a bunch of iridescent chameleons here. There's also some that are just like regular shimmers. There's some that are shimmers that are a little bit more textured and sparkly. I don't know if those ones had a specific name, but there's a few different formulas going on here, and I went through, and to the best of my ability, I split it up. So we've got greens, blues, red, orange, pink, purples, and then one that's like not a shift at all. So hopefully this can be as helpful as possible because there are a lot of blue and green iridescent shades. The first shade that I have here is called Light Year, and this one has like a pink, green, gold shift, lots of different colors going on here. It's one of my favorite iridescent chameleons. So hopefully you can see, super intense and beautiful. From my view, I can actually see a bit more green and blue. So there is Light Year. So next we have the shade Saturn's Rings, and this one has a yellowy green shift to it. I put it with the greens because when I was swatching it before, I felt like I could really see that, but it does also have a decent amount of yellow. It's kind of hard to group these when there's so many different shifts going on, so I kind of just went with the shift that you can see the most. But there's Saturn's Rings. And that one was an iridescent chameleon as well. So next we have the shade Eon, and I want to say that this is also an iridescent chameleon, but I'm not sure. I can't remember. This one has a yellow, green, and orange shift as well. It's a little bit less sparkly. I don't know if you can tell. It's like a little bit more of a satin. Next we have the shade Ice Giant. Okay, why is that a pink? How did that end up there? It actually has a bit of pink and blue going on. I don't know how it ended up there. It got a little bit mixed up, but I'll just go ahead and swatch it. You can see it has a really pretty pink shift. I'm gonna leave it to the side so I can swatch it next to the pinks when the time comes. Sorry about that. I tried to do my best at organizing these. And then next we have one of the really intense shades. This is called Chiron. A little bit thicker, a little bit more loosely packed, it feels like almost. So there's what that one looks like. It does have a really beautiful shine. It's kind of like a silver base with a green shift. Okay, next I have this shade here called Space Baby, and I would describe this as a purple base with a green shift mostly. You can see the purple a little bit there. Super pretty. Again, that one is a little bit more of like a satin. Some of them come off a little bit more intense, but honestly, they all look really beautiful on the inner corner. And then next we have this shade, which is called Atlas. This is a really intense bluey green shifting shadow, kind of like a turquoise shift, and it's one of those very intense shades. Do you see that? It's a little bit more loose, but if you pack that on the inner corner, you could use a glitter glue, you could spray your brush. It is really, really intense. It doesn't even show how green it is right now, but it is. Okay, next I have the shade Snow Globe, and this is a really pretty duochrome. It's like a white, pinky green shade. It's a little bit less intense, and I believe that this is just one of their regular shadows that you can buy for like $5 or $6 or something like that. So that one is pretty, not as shifty as the Iridescent Chameleons, but still a really good shadow. Next we have this shade here, which is called Celine. I actually don't remember this one that much. Okay, so it looks to be like a pinky gold shifting shadow. Again, a little bit more of like a silver base almost, and it's one of the very intense flaky ones. It's not like an actual flaky shadow, but it is that kind of texture. You have to smooth it out a little bit, but it does have a really beautiful shift. It's that one there is Celine. Okay, next we have the shade Time Shift. If I remember correctly, this isn't one of my favorites because it's a little bit softer. It still has like a pink, yellowy, green thing going on. It kind of reminds me of Light Year, but Light Year is a little bit more intense. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if you can see, that's the first shade. I mean, I guess the yellow is a little bit stronger with this one, but I don't reach for that one as much. And then lastly for this row, I have the shade Solar Flare, which is a really, really beautiful yellowy, greeny orange shade. I don't know if you can see. On my arm, it looks very green, but on the camera, it looks very orange. Trying to move around a little bit so you can see the shifts a bit more. Okay, so next we have this shade here, which is called Astral, and it has a beautiful red shift to it with a little bit more of a green base. There's what that looks like. I guess I would describe it as like an orangey red. And then next I have the shade Phoenix, which is such a stunning shade. I mean, do you see that? It is one of the most intense shadows ever. If you're looking to buy just a few of these, my top would probably be Light Year, Red Giant, and Phoenix, just because this one is so, so intense. It has like a blue base with orange and yellow and green shifts. It's just beyond, and it's a super, super intense formula. Look at that. Like I can't with that shadow. Okay, next we have this shade here, which is called Euphoria, and it's a pinky purple shift, a little bit more on the flaky side. Gonna kind of put it right here. There's another purple one coming up that I like a little bit more, but that one is pretty intense nonetheless. Next shade is called Red Giant. I'm gonna swatch it right here next to Astral, just because I feel like they should be compared. This is such a beautiful shifting shadow. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a decent dip going in it. It's one of my favorite inner corner shades ever. I just love the shift. This one's more of a pinky red as opposed to an orangey red, but it's the closest to like a true red shifting shade I've ever seen. And I feel like it just like adds extra oomph to any look that you do. It's just so, so cool. Okay, next we have the shade Lunar Spectrum. This one feels a little bit more like a satin, and it kind of has some pink, green, and yellow shifts going on. That one is pretty, but I don't reach for it as much, but now I'm looking at it and it does have that green base with the orangey, pinky shift as well, so it's really pretty. I feel like I should use that one more. Okay, next we have the shade Zero Gravity. I really, really like this purple just because I feel like it's such a true iridescent purpley shade, and it's so vibrant. It just looks so pretty with every look. I feel like swatched out, it's not looking as intense, but it's really beautiful. I actually wore this as a highlight in a video the other day, and I got so many comments about what highlight I was wearing, but it was just this. And I've been loving using these as highlights recently. And then I have this one here, which is called Ice Giant. This one has a soft pinky shift to it. That one's a little bit less intense again. I mean, honestly, these are all beautiful, so I'm just trying to go through and mention the ones that I use the most. And then lastly, we have the shade Powdered Sugar, which is honestly just a soft, cool toned white shade. It might have just a little bit of a green shift, but if you're gonna get an inner corner color from Terra Moons, this is probably not the one I'd recommend because it's just so plain in comparison to everything else. You can see it's just a pretty true white with the tiniest bit of blue. Okay, so now I have 3 different extreme multi-chromes from Terra Moons, which are all really, really beautiful. You can see the shift a little bit there. Isn't that so cool? So I love these. They're one of my favorite multi-chrome formulas. I'm just gonna go ahead and swatch them all out, probably on the back of my hand so I can move it and show you the shifts a little bit more. So this one here is called Moonwalk, and it has shifts of deep blue, green, maybe a little tiny bit of like a purple, maybe more of like an indigo, I would say, but it is a really beautiful shade. So there is Moonwalk. Look at that. So pretty. And then this one is called Alter Ego, and I really love this shade because it reminds me of the Northern Lights in an eyeshadow because it has that black base with shifts of purple and green and blue. Like, I just feel like that looks like the Northern Lights. So there is Alter Ego. See all the shifts. I guess I should have done the iridescent ones on my hand like this too. I wasn't thinking about it and I had so many to do. And then lastly is the shade Mood Ring, which is such a beautiful blue, green, gold shifting shadow. So intense, look at that. It's just amazing. I bought this because of Kira Lachelle. Just throwing that on right here. Okay, it's not picking up the shifts of that one as much, but they are very, very beautiful shades. Okay, so next we're gonna be jumping into the purple row. So we're starting off with one of their pastel purples. This is the shade Libra, and it's a really beautiful, soft shade. I've talked about their pastels before, and I have a full review. I really, really love their formula. I feel like it's just really user-friendly, super easy to blend and build up and everything like that. And then we have the shade Wavelength, which is one of the Pastel Chameleons. It's a really beautiful purple. Has a little bit of like a pink iridescence to it. Okay, next we have another pastel matte here, and this one's called Lunar Haze. It's a little bit deeper than the previous one. And you'll see their matte shadows in general are a little bit more on the powdery side, but that's what I prefer. I love powdery shadows that are easy to blend. And then next we have the shade Moon Lily, and this is such a beautiful silver with a little bit of a purple tone to it. It's just really, really intense. Okay, next we have the shade Star Crazy. I believe this is one of the neon mattes. It's just more of like a purpley pink bright tone. Then we have another one here, and this one's definitely a little bit more pink, but I have a lot of pinks, so I kind of just made it fit in the rose as best as I could. This is the shade Space Bound. So there's what that one looks like. It looks very pink here, but then when you compare it with pinks, it does look a little bit more purple. Next, we have more of like a mid-tone plummy purple called Orchid. Here's what that one looks like. Next, we have one of their Cosmic Chameleons here, which I will say that of all of their collections, the Cosmic Chameleons was the only one I was a little bit disappointed by, just because most of them are not very shifty, so I felt like they weren't as worth the price compared to other things like their Iridescent Chameleons are a little bit more expensive, but they're truly some of the best shadows ever. So I wasn't ride or die for the Cosmic Chameleons, but this is still a really beautiful purple, and it is called UFO. Here's what that one looks like. Okay, next we have the shade Interstellar, which is a really beautiful duochrome. It kind of has like a rusty red base with purple and blue shifts. It's not as creamy because it's just one of the regular shadows, but it still is a really, really beautiful. The shift is showing on my finger a bit better than my arm. Okay, next we have one of my favorite shadows from Terra Moons ever. This is the shade Moontide, and it has a really beautiful blue shift. It looks very purple right now, but when you catch the shift, you see that right there. Super strong shift. This was my favorite of the Cosmic Chameleons. I really, really recommend this color if you love purples. It is such a unique one. I actually mentioned this as one of my top 10 single shadows ever. It's just so beautiful. And then last but not least, at the very end here, we have a deep indigo, which is called Royal. This one is less powdery than their other shadows. Oh man, oh, you didn't even see that. Wow, fail. Okay, I'm gonna do a second swatch, but there's what Royal looks like. So there's pretty much all of their purple shadows. Okay, so now moving on to the pink row, I'm gonna start off with this shade right here, which is one of their more intense flaky shadows, and it is called Andromeda. It's a really beautiful, soft baby pink. Again, the shine on that, super intense. We have a pastel pink matte here, which is called Utopia. One is very pale, but it's a pretty pink shade. It also works really well for blush if you like cool tone pink blushes. And then I have this shade, which is labeled as Aurora, but I'm pretty sure that it's mixed up with this one here called Starry Eyes. So one of these is a pink with a blue shift, one is a pink with a yellow shift. But when I did my original video on these, I think they were mislabeled. So I'm gonna go ahead and say that Starry Eyes is this one here, which is a pink with a yellow shift. Very pretty. That one, as far as texture goes, it's a little bit more dry to the touch compared to a lot of their shimmers. And then we have another pastel matte here, which is called Palm Reader. Here's what that one looks like. Okay, we have this shade, which I snuck in here because it's like a pink with a green shift, but I wasn't sure exactly where to put it. It is really, really pretty nonetheless, even though it's not quite as like pastel pink as these other ones. I don't know if you can tell, it has like a rosy base. And then next we have that shade Aurora, the pink with a blue shift. Again, that one is a lot more dry to the touch than some of their more creamy shadows. Just gonna go ahead and put that on. They remind me of the Davina Willy Wonka exploders a lot, and I actually did compare those in the original video that I did on their pastel collection. So now we've got some neons here. This first one is called Not That Serious, and it is a really beautiful coral. Oh, I got a hair stuck. I'm just struggling over here, but there's what Not That Serious looks like. Like I said, very bright coral. We have a really bright pink called Terraverse, another neon matte here. So we have a really bright pink called Terrasphere. This one is very creamy and metallic. And then we have another one here, which is more of like a rusty pink. This one is called Bonfire. I believe this has like a little bit of an orange base as well. Yeah. That one's like an orange to pink shift. Okay, really quickly, I'm gonna dip into the shade La Reina right here because it's a bright red and I don't really have another bright red. They don't have any repeats in their collection. So I thought it would best be compared right here. So there's the pink row. Okay, so this next row is a mixture of some rose gold, some orange, and some red. So I'm gonna start off with this one right here, which is called Meteorite. It's a pink with a golden shift. The pink is definitely a lot more subtle, but is a really, really beautiful shade. Next, we have the shade Sunshine here, which is a really beautiful kind of soft peach. I think I'm gonna swatch By Law real quick, just because I feel like it kind of belongs here. It is, well, I guess it's like a rosy shade. I could have swatched it with the pinks, but it's more of, you know what? I probably should have swatched that one with the pinks. But it's a really beautiful shade. Okay, next I have this one here, which is called Sweet Like Honey, and it is a very warm gold. It's a really, really beautiful tone. And I think next to that, I'm going to swatch another shade in the palette here, this one called Ritmo, which is another really beautiful gold. As you can see, more yellowy, not as warm. Next, we have a warm matte here, which is called Butternut. Really nice and soft. And next to that, just because it feels like the right place, I'm gonna take this shade right here called Salvaje. It's a really bright orange. Pop that right here. Next we have an orange shimmer, and this is called Solstice. Ooh, those two go really well together. This one is called Jupiter and I. That one's a little bit more pink. I mean, actually, maybe a little bit more peach. We have the shade Cosmic Blaze. And then Meet Me on Mars, which is more of a red. I'm gonna swatch the shade Sangre now, which is a really bright, deep matte red. You can see it's a little bit more of a true red. And then lastly for this row, I have a darker kind of deep orange shade, which is called Cognac. So there's all of my super warm shades kind of put together. Unfortunately, my arm's starting to stain a little bit, but it doesn't look too bad. So now we're gonna move on to this row here, which is a bunch of yellows, and then some neutrals. So this first one here is a really beautiful soft pastel yellow. This one is called Twilight. Next we have a beautiful soft yellow shimmer called EO, I wanna say. It looks like low on the back, but I'm pretty sure I was told that it was EO. So this one is a really beautiful shade. It's a soft yellow, definitely not a gold. So I just really, really love the tone of that. And then we have a really bright neon yellow. This one is called Land on the Stars. Okay, so we've got two duochromes here that I kind of just threw in. This one is called Hot Spice Cider. It's one of my favorite shades because it has a really beautiful green shift and like a really warm base, but I don't know, it's just super, super pretty. I know it doesn't exactly make sense here, but it's kind of a neutral, so I made it work. And then we have another really beautiful shade here, which is called Martian, and it's more of like an antique greeny gold. Isn't that pretty? So I really like the tone of that one as well. It's definitely quite more green than the shade Honey. Next we have the shade Spacewalker. It's like a very, 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 very light neon peach. This one to me is not very exciting. Then we have the shade Thigh Highs, which is a really beautiful, soft, cool tone taupe. I don't know why that looks so funny right now, but I love these neutral mattes from them. I just feel like they blend so, so easily. This one is called Hazelnut Mocha. You can tell these all have more fall-inspired names. That one's kind of like your typical beauty guru transition peachy shade. Next, we have the shade Root Beer Float, which is a really cool kind of slightly yellow neutral. I wish I had a root beer float right now. There's what that one looks like. And then we have a nice deep brown here, which is called Decadent. Last but not least, we have a little bit more of a plum, which is called Chestnut. It's a really pretty shade as well. There's that row all done. Okay, so next we're going to move on to the green row, and we're gonna start off with this pastel here, which is like a really light baby mint. It's called Lunar or Later, which I love the name of that one. There's what that looks like. Just a very, very light mint. Next we have this soft green here, which is called Fourth Dimension. This one is one of their really pretty duochromes. It's a soft green base with a pink shift. It's definitely more on the unique side. It is called Callisto. Do you see the pink shift there? It's really, really pretty. I kept it with the greens though because the green base is pretty strong. I feel like you're mostly seeing pink, but from my view, I see green and gold more. And next we have a pretty turquoise pastel, which is called Just a Phase. Next we have a really beautiful soft green shimmer. This one is called Dragonfly, and it has a little bit of a golden shift. For some reason, that shade makes me think of St. Patty's Day. Next we have a yellowy green, which is called Arctic Lime. There's what that one looks like. Pretty strong yellow undertone. It's like a chartreuse. And then we have another one which looks very, very similar, but it's a little tiny bit darker. This is the shade Shire. So I feel like they look more different swatched out than they do in the pan, but they definitely are a little bit different. And then next we have a little bit of a deeper kind of true green, which is called Ivy. Pop that right here. I'm gonna swatch this shade right here called Mi Gente, which is an olive green. I'm making such a mess right now. This one has like a little bit of a gray base to it when you blend it out. But it's also a little bit deeper as well. Now moving on to some really pretty shimmers. We've got this really bright green, which is called Radiation. Oh man, I did it again. I'm so sorry. But there's what it looks like. Next we have the shade Mint Frosting, which is kind of a deeper mint. Really pretty. And then the very last green that we have here is called Green Goblin. That one is a little bit less creamy to the touch in the pan, but it's just a really, really deep green. Stick it right here. It's a really pretty shade though. So there are all of the greens. Oh no, I don't think I swatched the shade Icono yet. So I'm just gonna go ahead and do that real quick and put it in here with the greens. Gosh, what does it remind me of? It doesn't really look that similar to any of these. I'll just put it right here. It's like a greeny yellow. Now there's all the greens. Okay, last but not least, finally moving on to the blue row. I'm sorry this video is so long, but I kind of knew that it was going to be just because we have so many shadows to swatch. So the very first one here is a really beautiful light pastel blue. This is called X-Ray, and I don't think that this was actually one of the pastel chameleons. I think this is one of the more flaky shadows, but it is a really beautiful blue, and it has a little bit of a purple shift to it as well. So there's what that looks like. My skin is drying out quite a bit because of how many swatches I've done. So if they're not sticking as well, I'm pretty sure it's just because my arm is done at this point. Next, we have a light blue pastel called Daydreamer. This one is not picking up as well, but I never remember having an issue using it on my eyes. There's what that looks like, very, very light. Next, we have this really beautiful blue with a gold shift. This is called Little Dipper. Look at that, super pretty. Next, we have another blue here. It is called Skyfall. It's a really beautiful, soft blue. Super pretty. It almost has like a little bit of a silverness to it. We have, I want to say this was one of the neon blues. It's the shade Azure Skies. Very, very bright. Next, we have this shade here called Half Moon, and this is a really, really beautiful blue-green silver shifting shadow. It's so stunning. Like just the way it catches the light. I mean, you can see that right there. It's just really, really intense. I feel like at this point I should go ahead and swatch this shade right here, which is called Carnival. Just because it's kind of a mid-tone blue. It feels like it goes right here. You can see it is a little bit deeper. Oh my gosh, you can't see that because I'm swatching off camera. You can see it's a little bit deeper than Azure Skies. Next, we have the shade Orion's Belt, which is a really beautiful blue with a little bit of a green shift. I did at one point have a collab palette that's no longer available, and I don't really talk about it as much because it was a very bad experience, but there was a shade in there named after my son called Roman, and it was a blue-green, just super intense metallic. Every once in a while I get questions on dupes for that particular shade, and I would say this one comes very, very close. It's just a really intense blue. Look at that. Okay, next we have another neon blue here. This one's more of just a cobalt, and it is called Neptune's Waves. So there's what that looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and swatch Por La Noche now. Let's put it right here. Next we have a deep kind of blue-green shimmer, and this is called Stormy. This isn't my personal preference as much. It's not a shade I would reach for all the time, but it is nice if you like more of a smoky shimmer shade. And then last but not least, we have a really deep navy blue, which is called Arabian Nights. This one is a little bit more dry to the touch. I'm gonna do another swatch of that. So there are all of the blues swatched out. I think they look really beautiful. They would even be a stunning monochromatic palette altogether. And honestly, I love that swatching all of these shadows out. Yes, there's a few things that are similar, but they do such a great job in their line of not repeating. I kind of want to do a video where I sit down like this and just go through and use all my shadows from one particular brand. For example, I could do Terra Moons and just make a few different color stories out of only their shadows and just sit and make BYOPs. And I don't know, I think it could be fun and maybe a little bit inspirational if you like single shadows. So let me know. I don't know if I'm explaining it perfectly, but that is the last of the shadows. I really, really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.